Come on, Ivan, take it away.
I'm feeling awkward, and I think that's unfair.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this international pitter-patter of grey matter about scale modelling. That was textbook introduction.
Pitter-patter of grey matter.
A pitter-patter of grey matter. So today, obviously, we have us guys from the Plastic Posse. We have John Bernani, Scott Gentry, and myself, Mr. Ivan Taylor, and from the the Interesting Modelling Company, Jonathan Mock and Mr. Drewe Manton. How are you all doing?
Very good, actually. Very
good.
It's weird seeing a screen with 5.
Yeah.
it's I think the most we've ever had is 4, isn't it?
It is.
So, welcome, gentlemen. Welcome to our little corner of the internet, and hoping for a bit of an interesting little discussion on our relative disciplines, shall we say, within broadcasting.
I have to make note of that, Drew. Scripted gags. Okay?
Scripted gags, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, like improv.
It's like
improv rubbish.
Isn't it? It's like an auto cue.
Yeah, it is. That's very slick. I'm getting worried. It's making us look bad. This is.
Yeah, already.
Yeah, well, we're a minute into our own show, and we've been made to look bad by the hosts, the guests rather. So
yeah,
unbelievable.
Yeah,
more than just a pretty face, I tell you.
I told you, Ivan is the brains of the operation. So yeah,
the looks and the brains,
and
the voice for that matter,
and the trousers, the
lounge trousers,
and the jumpers.
Yeah, and the jumper, the age-appropriate jumpers.
He's going to be a hit when he comes to America.
Oh, you're doing the Nationals this year, aren't you, Ivan?
Indeed. Yes, that was one of the talking points I was going to discuss. The US Nationals coming in July. It will be my first time ever going to the States, never mind just the model show over there. So that's going to be an experience on its own. I'm really looking forward to it.
I went to the States 4 times around the turn of the century, I suppose we should call it. But yeah, and 2 of those times I stayed with Chris Buchholz.
Okay. Yeah.
Up in California for a couple of weeks each time, and I absolutely had the best time. Absolutely had the best fun. Visited loads of museums, model shops, model shows, went to the local model clubs and stuff like that. So, yes, I think you will find, Ivan, a group of extremely generous hosts, shall we say.
Definitely.
It's just I was going out to the US Nationals in 2001. 2002. I'd planned to go out to the US Nationals, and then 9/11 happened, and it just nothing. It became an impossibility, really, for that period of time, and I've never been back since, sadly. So
now remind me, 2001. That was just a couple of years ago, wasn't it?
Yes, yeah, I think it was the last week, actually. That's age.
It still sounds like it should be in the future.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. So you got all your ducks in a row for that, Ivan, have you? Is that all?
I have so much to do yet. Luckily, my passport's still valid. That's about that, and my ESTA. So that's all out the way and organised. So
right,
it's just money and getting models finished for the show. That's
so
all I need to get.
Where is it this year? Where is it?
It's in Omaha, Nebraska.
So it's pretty central then, isn't it?
Yeah.
Ivan's going to the most popular resort in all of the United States, Omaha, Nebraska.
I think it was Brian. Was it Brian Scholl, the SR-71 pilot, who once wrote, "I did Nebraska in 7 minutes today." That's the only way to do Nebraska.
I'm making a trip of it. So I'm first flying to DC, spending about 4 or 5 days there. then flying to Colorado and spending time with everyone at JB's house. By the sound of it, he's invited every person in the country to his house, and then we're all heading to Nebraska. So it's going to be a hell of a 2 weeks.
Yes, I would say it's practically impossible that you're not going to have the best time of your life there. With like I say, whenever I've been, it's always been to stay with friends and hosted by friends. And the last few times is entirely to do with the hobby, and it's just I can't think of a single bad memory. I can't think of a single bad memory from the entire sort of month I've spent in total with the modelling community out there.
Yeah, so. we've got friends coming from Australia. You know, Dave and his crew from On the Bench are planning on coming up, and John, I think Sam Dwyer's coming, and Ivan's coming from the UK. So we plan on making a big deal out of it. It should be a blast.
Well, let me just check my bank account. Oh, it would be great. Yeah, I must. One year, the next couple of years, I'm going to get back out there for a week or two. And,
well, fingers crossed. I'll just settle for being able to go to the nationals in this country this year with a bit of luck.
Yes, I was about to bring up Telford because you guys didn't make 21, a much more stripped back, reduced show. Still a great one, but and I know me and John were talking earlier that hopefully 2022 can be a big scale model world, come back with a bang.
It would be nice to have a little bit of a return to form, wasn't it? It just various things colluded to stop us going in 2021, and I think we had to come to an agreement, didn't we, John? A few months beforehand.
We did, and we with the benefit of hindsight, we made absolutely the right decision. So I have no regrets.
I regret not being able to get there, but I have no regrets about our reasons for not going, if you know what I mean. No. I absolutely think it was the right decision, but hopefully 2022 will be a different story.
I say fingers crossed. I'm still waiting to see whether the Cosford show is going ahead in April, because that would literally be our first show of the year. So that would be nice. Nice trip up the motorway and the Lakeside Cafe and the Bikers Cafe as well. And right to you two, Scott, JB don't know this. Our trip to Telford, which is our literally the eponymous Rock to Telford playlist. But we drive up the motorway to Telford and then cross country. We come off in Worcestershire. We stop off at a fishing cafe and have breakfast there, and then usually about half an hour later we're still hungry, so we stop off at a Bikers Cafe and have tea and muffins. So everything, honestly, all our journeys are always based around food and cake.
That's the only way to travel on my mind.
It's over the last 15 years or so, hasn't it? It's become just the same. It's the same routine, which you'd think get boring, but when you only do it once a year, it's something you spend. You come away from that weekend, you spend the rest of the year looking forward to doing that again. I got up to John's on the Thursday, stay at John's on the Thursday night. We set up on the Friday morning.
I can tell you that when we finally do get back in the car and we are heading up the M5 and we press play on the iPod and the stamping, clapping feet of "We Will Rock You" kick in, we will think, only feels like yesterday we were doing this, and it won't. It'll be 3 years.
Wow!
Thanks, John.
Well,
you're just trying to cheer us up now, aren't you?
Yeah.
These are the joys of being a guest on your own show, is I can actually be a bit more.
Well, speaking of cake, anybody that gets to go to John's, he likes to make funfetti cake and cupcakes, which is fantastic. So you get that, provided he's also a world-class smoker of meat. So you never go hungry when you go to John's.
Well, our John's a vegetarian. I am very much not.
It's okay. I do good Brussels sprouts, asparagus, broccoli, you name it, we'll smoke it.
Drewe Manton, consumer of pigs.
Let's get the brisket on.
Yes.
Drew's pigs in blankets are just essentially pigs.
In blankets, yeah.
Exactly.
I want to go back to what you said, Jonathan. You talked about having that routine and looking forward to it every year. Now, granted, the IPMS Nationals aren't in the same place every year, but certainly we experience that same thing where in the US, the show starts on a Wednesday, goes all the way to Saturday, but like your adrenaline's pumping, you know, by Tuesday you have your routine, whether it's caravanning there or whether it's flying there, you know, you're seeing friends in the airport. And then when you get to the show Wednesday morning or Wednesday evening, it's like you said, you think it was just yesterday, but it was a year ago or a couple of years. It's something that I look forward to every year. And I'm so happy that Scott, this was actually his first year at the IPMS Nationals, and some other friends, TJ as well, and Doug on the podcast, they'd never been to a large show like this. And part of me was like, I hope I didn't build it up too much. But, you know, when they first got there, you know, Scott, you can chime in. I think you realized right then and there what I was talking about and how special it is. And I look forward to Ivan experiencing that this year as well.
Yeah, I mean, you know, there was a little bit of a fear that maybe, you know, it had been oversold. Dave Knights on Plastic Model Mojo was a big cheerleader for the Nats too, and you know, we were excited to go, but I kind of wondered. But as soon as we got there, it was just nonstop. And I mean, we went, you know, 15, 16 hours a day, sometimes longer, and there just wasn't enough time, too much fun to be had. I assume Telford is the same way.
I've never known somebody who's come to Telford for the first time and not just walked around slack-jawed for the first couple of hours, just because I mean, everything. I've never been to the US Nationals. Everything tells me that the US Nationals and the UK Nationals are very, very different shows. They're very, very different, but they both have that scale thing that just leaves people slack-jawed with, and you end up with people who haven't been there before. You're kind of looking at them and you're looking at their face and you're kind of thinking, yeah, I know, right? Because we've been going forever, and you get this kind of little, almost a sense of possessive pride about it, if you know what I mean, where because you know what the show is and what it involves, and you're seeing people experience it for the first time, you feel that little surge of pride in showing something off that's become really special to you over the years. I can remember the first time, the first Nats, as it always used to be known as in Sam, was 87, which, what was that, about 5 years ago? 1987, yeah, roughly. And I just remember just going up there, walking the door. The first thing I see is the SAM Scale Aircraft Modelling stand. There's Mike McAvoy, and I'm like that. And then it's like, then I'm walking around, and all these traders that have been names in a magazine, so there they are, right? It's like, there's Hannants, ED Models, you know. Who was my Peter Lockhart? Who was that? Main Track, you see. And then I walk around the corner, and there's the you know, there's like Matchbox are here, and I'm like, and then next to them it's Airfix, and I honestly, I'm like the guy at the beginning of Scanners. That was it, you know. It was a formative experience on top of my love of the hobby anyway. But that was the thing where I thought, oh boy, I want to do this for as long as I can. I mean, I guess we've kind of worked it out. It was probably it will have been 7 or 8 years before John and I even ever spoke to each other. But 87 was our first nationals. It was my first nationals as well.
And there's a lovely little sequel to that is that we then crossed paths the year later at the Birmingham NEC. We hadn't met, but we were in the same building, Birmingham NEC, 21st of April, for the Rush Hold Your Fire tour.
Oh, yes.
For which, if you ever see the show of hands video, that when they're playing Manhattan Project, there's a brief moment where it cuts away to somebody in the audience. It's him.
Whoa.
He's on the video, which means I'm going to find that clip and show it before the show.
Yes. What that fresh face, long head 17-year-old.
Yeah.
Did that involve any handcuffs by any chance, or
no? It was no. It's weird. It's weird how many times. It's weird how many people in the modelling scene that our paths merged before I ever actually knew them. And this is especially true of Dick Ward, the famous, the late great Dick Ward, the guy behind Model Decal. Is when I first started doing artwork for Airfix 25 years ago, which was a fortnight ago. It was it was like Dick Ward, one of my heroes, and I got chatting to him, and in passing, because in order to get to Dick's house in Farnborough, I get the train, and the train would change at Reading, and it would go through various stations, including Wokingham, which is where we used to live back in the 1970s. And I mentioned to Dick, I used to go to model shows in Wokingham with my mum. Hello, mum. And he said to me, oh yes, he said, I was always at that show. And I was like, so I would have been in the town hall at Wokingham, and Dick Ward would have been there, and I didn't know him, no idea. But it's weird, like I say, is how many times you have these convergences with people that when you later get talking to them, they go, oh, I was there. And me and Drew, we've been pinging on each other's radar a number of times before we actually. The first time we met was Yeovilton. I think it was 1996. And
I think it was later than that.
No, it was Yeovilton 1996.
I still maintain it was Bath in 98. You knew sat at that table.
No, it was Yeovilton. This is where we're going to have an argument now for the next 10 minutes. It was Yeovilton 1996, and you had it was either an Alt Music Rush T-shirt or it was a Rec Model Scales T-shirt, Rec Scale Models T-shirt. And I went, no, it was the Rush one. It was Alt Music Rush, and I went, oh, Rush, and we started talking, and you went, I'm Drewe Manton, and that was the beginning of this whole thing.
Similar things happen in the States. I've been going to shows, since I could walk, literally, because my dad was very much into the hobby and he drugged me with him. But back in the early 2000s, the advent of digital photography, one of the things I did when I was a teenager is I would go to shows and I would take several hundred photographs. And it's really cool now when I look back to shows. I started taking digital in 2003. I've talked with friends and they're like, oh, I was at that show. And there's been instances where I'm like, well, here's my album. Look, see if anything's there. And they're like, oh my gosh, I built this then. It's just like you said, Jonathan, there are moments where you become friends with someone where you've certainly crossed paths before. And It's really cool to connect over those little things. And then you quickly become literally best friends. I look to an instant this last Las Vegas Nationals where, we didn't meet in person. The Model Geeks, which is another great podcast, Darren, Frildo, Whitey, and Samo, and Scott Samo, we'd never met them before. We had breakfast and now we're best friends. I mean, it's really a show, and it's really to show the love of the hobby. So
for that matter, Doug and I have been friends for 25 30 years, but we've been doing a podcast with John and TJ. I'd never met them in person until the Nationals, and so like you said, it's kind of that chance to not only share your passion with modelers from all over, and post-COVID probably all around the world, but certainly from around the nation. But to meet people that you might interact with, like you were saying, Jonathan, about you and Drew, you seeing them online or whatever, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh hey, so it's great, it's terrific. It's certainly a high point of the year for me now. So
yeah, actually, a bit of housekeeping here, Drew. Apparently, the Cosford show's been cancelled. So
yes, I did see that. Yes. Yeah. Oh well, that's breakfast off then.
So I'll have to wait until November then, unless we have a trip up to Cosford at some stage in the year to go and see Mr. Pollard, because he lives.
Yeah, we can arrange a
I think we're going to do that.
With Mr. Pollard, can't we? But no, yeah, one of the, like I say, the best thing I've found about the modeling moving onto the internet is the way that you've been able to make these connections with people all over the world. And these people become friends. I can remember at the Nationals when they were even at Stoneleigh and places, where I was watching Roy Sutherland, because Roy Sutherland would be there with what was then Cooper Details, and he'd be working on something like that, and it was just this kind of master modeler. And then I go to California for the first time in 2000, and he is just part of the club that I went and visited with Chris Buckholtz and Brad Chun and all those guys. And since then, Roy and I have become very good friends. We tend to, we've stayed in the same place, in the same cottage together at the Nationals and stuff like that. And he's become a really, really good friend over the years. And you kind of think that there's no other way that could happen other than with the internet. Because if we'd remained magazines and things like that, you would just never have made these networking connections. that have basically allowed me to go to California twice, and with open invites to go plenty of other places as well. And I think it's for all the negatives, and we have this discussion quite a lot, for all the negatives that it does bring with it, in terms of conflicts and stuff. Overall, I just think it's been just the best thing, one of the most important things for my hobby in my life.
This I've said this before, and I'll continue to say it, for as long as for as long as I can, and that is that I think the rise of the internet in the mid 1990s, it started to become more accessible. That and modeling, the explosion we've had in modeling over the last 25 years, it is, the two have gone hand in hand. The technology, not only just the technology in terms of communication, but just the technology in terms of computers has aided the manufacture of models, no end. But I also think that the technology in terms of communication, it enabled people to form communities. So you had the very embryonic things like rec model scale. Then you had the forums. Then that's kind of like hyperscale. Then that's turned into social media or whatever. But you've had these very strong modeling communities that have sprung up. We might not be the same numbers as the heyday of the 60s and the 70s, but we are more organized now. And also, the internet has enabled manufacturers to sell direct in a way that mail order never really kind of enabled them to do. So you've got one of those weird things that where the increase in the internet has harmed some things like films and music, I'd say it hasn't with scale modeling. The two have gone hand in hand. Yeah. And we are where we are now, which is, I don't think in the history of this hobby there has been a better time to be a modeler.
No way. The internet, and particularly social media to scale modeling, is I liken it to when radio came on the scene to newspapers. Modeling when I was growing up meant a magazine, and a magazine was 2 to 3 months behind, and you got little photos in the beginning. Most of them were black and white, and you got this sort of little narrow, poor view into the hobby. And now we're talking to Jonathan and Drewe and Ivan in the UK, and John and I here in the US, and we have the chance for unprecedented collaboration.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? I mean, you guys have got an international podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
I was just thinking, we've got north, south, west. If we could have got Pavel on, we could have had east as well. We could have had all four corners of the earth. But the ability, and really in the last 5 or 6 years, the ability to do this in particular, to all sit here at different times of the day, different parts of the world, and just talk with an audience is it's such a brilliant thing for the hobby. It's such
and YouTube as well. I mean, you look at you cannot keep up with the number of channels that are on YouTube now that are dedicated to model making. But you have some of the superlative ones. You have Plasmo, you have Uncle Night Shift. You have stuff there. You have what are essentially broadcast quality. Shows that are on.
Yeah. I look at some of the Japanese television series that I was watching a lot of them on YouTube about 10 years ago, and these were, because Japan is big for the hobby anyway, they had actual television series dedicated to building models and that were shown nationally and stuff. But I look at the stuff that stuff like Martin on Night Shift is doing on YouTube now, and it's vastly superior in every possible way to what they were being shown to millions of people 10 or 15 years ago. Now Martin has made such a success of his channel, but you look at the quality of what he's producing, and it is broadcast quality.
Yeah, and I love YouTube because there's every market satisfied there. You have Martin, who is a professional, and his, like you said, Drew, his production is the best in the business when it comes to scale modeling. I mean, it's honestly, you could put it on Netflix or a streaming service.
Yeah, absolutely.
It is drop dead gorgeous. Plasmo, very similar. But it's great to see that they're catering to different markets where Plasmo, you know, he rips through a build in one. And the same goes for Andy's Hobby Headquarters. You know, you have people that can speak to the masses at every facet, whether you want to dive deep into learning how to chip a model over a course of a week, or do you just want to put it together in an afternoon? And I think YouTube is that fantastic medium that allows people to connect with every market. And I'll be honest, every one of those guys is super nice too. I haven't talked to Plasmo, but Martin is great. Andy's great. You know, Evan from Panzermeister 36. I mean, these people are all super nice, super willing to support you and your hobby. And if you ask them a question, and that's something that I find it rarely in the hobby you get to someone that's not like that, and that's probably what keeps me coming back to this hobby.
I would say there's probably a little caveat there, and that Martin has turned that into a full-time job now.
Oh yeah,
that is what he does. So
he's a pro.
You know, I mean, I have my own YouTube channel. I just do a bit of noodling around and put it up on YouTube occasionally. You know, Martin is doing, you know, he's doing it such a high quality because he's turned it into a living.
Yeah,
he puts the hours in though. That's the thing.
I was just about to say that. Like, I think we talked about this a little bit before we came on. He obviously has Patreon and YouTube, so there'll be incomes. But we talked about when, like, a few of us did videos, and the amount of time that goes into editing and making sure everything's in shot with the camera and making sure the quality's good. It's like, no wonder he's making a living from it, because I can't do that stuff.
I mean, like I say, I go through phases of doing it, but then you realise that for an hour sat at my bench modelling, I'm putting another 2 or 3 hours on the other computer into editing it and narrating it and doing all that and doing multiple camera views and all the rest of it, and that almost becomes a hobby in its own right.
Yeah, Martin will tell you first. Oh, sorry, Drew. Yeah, Martin will tell you his 20 to 30 minute videos take him 80 to 90 hours a week. So
yeah. I mean, this is the thing, is that his YouTube channel is a full-time job. You know, he's doing a full week's work to give, you know, 30, sometimes 15 to 20 minutes of video a week. Yeah. You know, it's taking him 40 hours or whatever, you know, however many hours he puts into it, plus the Patreon stuff on top of that. But that said, I think he's done it exactly the right way, because all of the core content that Martin produces is available for free.
Yeah,
he is making money from the endorsements and the Patreon and stuff, which are bringing extra content to those that want it and are prepared to pay for it. But if you're not, the core of it is still all free and available.
Yeah,
which is exactly the right way to do that sort of thing.
Yeah, he is one of those one in a generation bits of raw talent.
Yeah,
you know, he kind of says, you know, this is my first try at figure painting, and I'm just like, he is just phenomenal, really is, you know, and And I'd also venture to suggest, and you might want to cover your ears, Ivan, but it was only 3 or 4 years ago that Spencer was talking to John and I at the Nationals, actually, and he said, "Have you heard of this guy called Ivan?" Really, and he said, "Really nice lad. He's doing some really, really great modelling, and you know, I see great things." And then sort of a few months later, I started talking to you about, you asked me to edit a photo for you or something. You said there was a Chaika photo or something. You asked me to edit it, and we started talking. And since then, you have become one of the biggest names on the scene in this country. Whether you like it or not, or you don't appreciate it, mate, you have. People do talk about you a lot. Because
look at Ivan blush.
mainly about how you managed to get through a whole year last year and only build 2 models.
That's still 2 more than a lot of other people manage. So,
joking aside, the point I'm trying to make is that, Ivan, you're still what, 24?
Yep.
Yeah. And so what we're seeing is younger talent coming into the hobby behind us old geezers, you know.
Well, speak for yourself, old darling.
Yeah, well, I'm quite happy to speak for myself. But yeah, what it proves to me is that the hobby is in rude health.
Yeah.
You're attracting people into it who are, you know.
If you'd have read some of the magazine editorials from the 1980s, where you had people kind of like proclaiming the death of the hobby, that computer games were going to kill the hobby off, and blah 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 blah. We were always being told that that there are no new people coming through. There are, where is this next generation of modelers coming from? And yet here we are. We've got Martin, we've got Ivan. There are, there's that. The name escapes me, but it's that girl doing the Gundam stuff on YouTube. You've got all these people coming through, and it's like, and again, I saw a comment the other day where somebody said something about literally somebody said this hobby is dying, and I'm just like, really?
Yeah, I don't think
you're not paying attention. Yep,
you're not paying. Exactly. If you think this hobby is dying, you're paying attention. And again, it goes back to, the discussion we had just last week on here about in the 1980s, the year's new kit releases would fill 1 or 2 pages of a magazine once a year, and these days you simply can't keep up.
But look at January alone this year.
Yeah. Well, I've had more models turn up in January, Ivan, than I probably had in the last 3 or 4 months of last year. Just because, I've had that Modelsvit twin Mustang. I had the 2 IBG Doras turn up today, the Armour Mustang, the Dream model UH1Y Venom turned up last week. The Bronco turned up today. It's just been this avalanche of stuff I pre-ordered months ago and all the rest of it.
You got your icebreaker to build?
Sorry?
You got your icebreaker to build?
I'm building. Well, that is under construction behind me. But it's just you just literally cannot keep up. Once upon a time in 1984 or 85, even as a 14-year-old, I could keep up with the monthly model releases that were in my price range. There was no problem.
I struggle to keep up with mini art alone.
Yeah.
Whatever they release, I try and get.
Art, quite frankly.
But the other thing is, people said video games would be the death of the hobby. I've played video games since I was 13 years old, and I know Ivan still does, and I still do. So
that was the comment. That was the comment. Somebody said something to the effect that that they said something about that they're not convinced there's a future to this hobby because kids today prefer to play video games. And I'm just thinking to myself, God, I heard that in 2000, I heard that in 1990, I heard that in 1980. It's just like, here we are. And in fact, Mike Williams has just said, my son has proved that youngsters are still up and coming. Yeah, they are. The thing is, we as enthusiasts, it's very easy for us to kind of like view the world through our own reflection, you see.
Yeah.
But the thing about this hobby is that I hate to half an hour in, I hate to have to start using rush metaphors already, but literally we exist in a rock pool, you see. Meanwhile, there is a whole ocean of people out there, of modelers who some wash up on the tide and engage with the hobby, and then the tide goes out, and some of them are taken away because it's not for them, but some remain. And those that remain become the ones who stick with it, you see. But that ocean of people who engage with the hobby, sometimes only once, sometimes a couple of times, it's so huge that's where the numbers come from. That's how our little rock pools keep getting filled up again all the time, you see. So, it is just a phenomenal time to be in this hobby. And we jokingly say, if you're a modeler now and you can't find anything to build and you're unhappy, you might be in the wrong hobby. We say that jokingly, but actually there's a smidgen of truth
there's more than a bit of truth to it, isn't there? Yeah. Sad as it is, lockdown has been great for the hobby.
Yeah.
Lockdown is you talk to the manufacturers and lockdown has, they haven't been able to keep up with the demands of people coming into the hobby. And if only 10% of those carry on with the hobby in some form or another, that's another huge influx of new people into the hobby. There's just no way this hobby is going anywhere.
Yeah, and the video game argument has been there forever. I mean, I've been entering nationals since the early 2000s, but right now I have this on my bench. It is a Object 279E straight from the World of Tanks game.
Yeah.
And
I was going to say, is that War Thunder or World of Tanks?
World of Tanks. They have it in World War Thunder too, but it's a 3D. And again, it also shows how the hobby has evolved. I mean, this is a completely 3D printed model outside of any traditional type of manufacturing. So it's really incredible, like you said, where we've come. And also, Jonathan, I also agree 100% with your comment concerning the ocean. There's a reason my name is Closet Modeler, because there's a lot of closet modelers out there. There are a lot of people that are building models that don't engage with the hobby. They go to the store or they buy from online, and it's very solitary, and that's great. They are enjoying it. It gives them what they need. I'll use an example. I lived in a development back in Pennsylvania, and I went to a holiday Christmas party for the development, and I had a ugly a jumper I bought from the Imperial War Museum that had Spitfires on it. And I was at an event, and this lady came up and said, "Oh, you like airplanes? My husband likes airplanes." And we start talking, and this guy has a collection of models and books that rivals mine. I mean, we're talking, hundreds of kits, hundreds of books, and buying everything from AK, ammo, Vallejo. So it's, and again, he's never engaged with the group before. And he's, "Oh yeah, I just do it in my basement. It's cool." It's really great to know you now. So, but it's just shocking that, there are people out there that they love it in their own way. And that's totally cool. And that's where I don't think, again, I look a lot of ways in the hobby as a business as well. The hobby, if it was dying, there wouldn't be this much stuff coming out. I'm sorry, economics 101.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's what it comes back to every time, isn't it?
Yeah.
If the hobby was dying, I wouldn't be in a position where I struggle to keep up on a month-by-month basis with new releases. Where you're having to, control your shopping cart.
Yeah.
Because I just don't bother anymore.
Yeah, I know you don't. Ivan, we live vicariously through Ivan, who just regularly posts huge piles of models that turned up this morning.
Ivan is single-handedly propping up the British economy at the moment. So
I'm doing my bit.
He will do. But the thing is what JB was saying there is that we've been joined by another guest now. So obviously, unbelievable. Is that you've got people who come into this hobby. They probably don't use airbrushes. They probably perhaps build, 1 or 2 kits a year or 2 or 3 kits a year. They've never been to a model show. They've never heard of the IPMS. They don't buy any of the magazines. They don't go onto the forums. They don't go onto social media. But they are numbered. They are the big numbers. They are the big numbers. And like I say, it's very easy for us as enthusiasts to look at our own reflection and think, this is what the whole hobby's like. Genuinely isn't, and and I've worked, I've worked in the industry for over 30 years, and there's always that thing is that there's this weird disconnect of how the industry works and how modelers think it works, and they are 2 completely different things.
Yeah, we did an interview with one of our audience members. We call them Modelers Minutes. They're great. And we talked to a gentleman from the UK. His name is Rick Lewis, and he doesn't do YouTube, doesn't do Facebook, doesn't do Instagram. He came across the podcast via a recommendation from his podcast provider, and he loves it, but he isn't a part of, Jonathan, to speak to what you're saying. He's not a part of the kind of more social part of it, but he loves it, and it was great to talk to him. But yeah, there's a lot of people like that out there.
But does he have no desire to be a part?
Yeah. Lost JB for a second there, but we'll get him back.
If he has no desire to be a part of it, that's great, isn't it? And if he does want to be a bigger part of it, it's out there waiting for him.
Yeah. And there is a part of me that sometimes thinks to myself, what was I a happier modeler when it was just me, the radio, and I wasn't sharing my work with anybody? I was just sat here building for myself, and that was it. Whereas these days, I think we all probably do this. We are all kind of like, we're almost kind of like building models live, aren't we? We build a bit, and then we take a photograph and we share it. And there's almost like no, not say privacy, but there's no everything. Everything's being done in the glare of
public domain.
Public domain.
Yeah,
brilliantly. Yeah, exactly. And I think this will probably have to carry on for a discussion at another time. But I think this is where you have a bit of a, not an issue. What's the word I'm looking for? You have a bit of a thing where you've got people who are coming into the hobby and they are seeing what people are achieving, who have spent years and years honing their craft, and they just want to be, how do I do that? I'm not getting these results. What do I need to buy to get these results? And you're thinking to yourself, they've gone out and bought a Fender Stratocaster, and they're suddenly like, right, yeah, okay, why can I not play Stairway to Heaven? Why can I not play Smoke on the Water? And it's like, have you tried practicing?
Yeah.
It's like,
what do I need to buy? 40 years. It's, sadly, it's like people buying airbrush sets and kits and wondering why they're not getting, the same results as, I don't know, Spencer Pollard or somebody. It's because he spent 40 years practicing to get there.
Yeah.
That's something we talk about all the time. John is really, really great talking about, he calls them slammer builds, but it could be a 48-hour group build for Models for Heroes for charity, but taking the time from these builds, and there's nothing wrong with putting all of your love and passion into a project and really trying to make a masterpiece. But I think there's also a lot of value in just taking the time sometimes just to build a model like we did as kids, just to slam one out in a week to remind us that, that's how we did it. And that's what made us fall in love with this hobby. And they don't always have to be, Telford's award winner, level builds. They can just be, for the enjoyment of it.
I have sat down before now and not very long ago with a simpler model and a pot of glue and a pair of scissors, and built it without any paint, without any, just slammed it together in an hour, and then it went in the bin, because it's not, it's not representative of what I do, but it was relaxation in its own right to just sit there and just slam a model together in an hour. You're never going to show it off anywhere, because that's not what it's about.
Yeah, this is one of the things that I've enjoyed kind of like in the last 10 years or so, is being able to go back to, Matchbox. I love Matchbox. I still contend they are the greatest kit company ever, with a semi-serious straight face. But going back to some of their stuff and being able to build it as I wished I could have built it when I was a kid. But the thing about those Matchbox builds is they're all straight from the box. And to be honest with you, I'm not blind to it. Matchbox, they made very good kits. Sometimes they didn't make very good replicas, or they could be a little bit on the clunky side, or they could be a bit crude. I don't care about that. I just want to sit down and build something. One of my favourite builds in the last, and we will allow builders a verb before Dave Fleming starts hitting the button there. One of the modelling projects that I've enjoyed most in the last 12 years was I picked up the Revell reissue of the Matchbox T2 Buckeye, built it straight from the box. It's a horrible kit. It really it's nasty, but it's one of my favourite models because I just built it, painted it, glued it, painted it, deckled it. That was it.
We'll use Spencer as a great example. Look at his legacy book. I mean, I have a copy of it. I mean, it really goes back to the roots of scale modeling and the purest form of it, and taking old kits that were, straightforward and just having fun telling that story. And I've done it before with old Tamiya kits, and I still have more. And by the way, I can't wait for a second edition, but like that book is exactly what we're talking about. And it's just a joy to read and to understand, what brings joy to a hobby. And I completely, and going back to the Matchbox, Jonathan, my dad had loads of them in the basement. I just remember those were the kits where all the parts were different colors. And then the 72nd scale armor, I love those as well, because you got a little diorama base with it. And it's like perfect. And those still, you see them on the show table today sometimes. And I find myself honestly attracted more to those than some of the newer kits, because it brings that sense of nostalgia. It brings a sense of just a pure joy as opposed to micrometer, understanding it, your gear length and all this stuff. But it's that what I find myself attracted to most at shows.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, I will be Lordy, on top of my already bulging dance card here, one of the things I will be going back to revisit this year is I've got several boxings of the Matchbox Hawk of Fury, including some Revell boxings, because it was 50 years ago that kit came out.
Oh, Lordy.
1972.
That's PK1, wasn't it?
PK1, yeah.
PK1,
and it's, and I'm going to revisit it and do something with it, but yeah, I mean, my modeling tends to be my modeling, because Drewe, we have a very good relationship with with manufacturers and things, and Drewe and I are always banging things out for the hobby company, who are the distributors in the UK for Tamiya and Italeri. So we are, Drewe will agree, we are very blessed to be in a position where we get the phone call and we're told, can you build this? Fabulous.
Yeah,
as kids, if somebody said to us, hey, one of these days you'll be building models for Tamiya, and we'd be like, so our workbench time tends to be split. I know Drewe manages to find time to build more things for himself. Quite frankly, I find building things for me rather boring these days, because I like the variety of just being asked, can you build this? And I'd be like, well, it's not something I'd usually build, but I find that brings back that kind of I hate to use the phrase childlike wonder, but it touches on that, in as much as I have no control over what I might be building next at any stage. And I suddenly get a box thrown in my hands and say, can you build that for us? And I'll be like, okay, it's a 1/9 scale Vespa scooter. I've got any interest in building whatsoever. Turned out to be one of the best projects I've worked on in recent years. So yeah, there is, I think it is very important that people try and stay in touch with that. Yeah, well, we use the phrase childlike wonder. Why not? And if that means just, as you say, do a slammer, just bang something out. Doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be incredibly well detailed. It doesn't have to be the best model you've ever made. It's also muscle memory. It's getting to that muscle memory of building things. And was it John? Who was that drew the video? Was it John Buis did that video?
John Bias.
John Bias, yeah.
Yeah, that's it. He did that video where he's talking about that you've, in order to kind of like hone your skills, you've got to do it regularly. You've got to do it repeatedly, and if you want to get the results, you've got to find the time to do it. And it was brilliant video, absolutely bang on the money. It's. Again, we come back to that thing. If people can't find something to build which puts a smile on their face, take up stargazing or something.
Golf clubs.
I think it's good. Yeah. So go.
It's entirely about effort. It's it's like asking a master musician how they're so gifted and talented and not accepting practice as an answer.
Well, I'm glad you asked me that
when the musician says, yeah, I practice every day for 8 hours.
Yeah.
I've done that every day for 15 years, and that's why I'm a good cellist or guitarist or whatever. And people are just unable to see that because they think it's down to an innate talent.
It's the fuzzbox that's doing all the heavy lifting.
Well, not just that, but they just think that to be that good at something, you have to have an innate. It's just, they're a natural genius at it. No, I've practiced for, I've practiced for however many decades at it. Yeah. It's like saying to someone like Floor Jansen that she's one of the world's best vocalists because she's got a naturally great voice. No, she's been taught how to use what she's got.
Practice brings out natural talent, I think is a good way of putting that. is, some people can practice and practice and practice, and they, they'll achieve a certain level. The people who hit the real heights, it is a genuinely natural talent, but it's the practice that gets them there.
So you'll never get to that. You'll never get to that height of a discipline without the practice. Exactly.
So we're just going to call up a comment here. Agree with Jonathan. I always like that line. And it says, just building a Bandai trench scene for a former commander of mine, also building an M4A1 alongside my PP M3 from my brother-in-law, whose dad fought on them in Italy with the 701st Tank Brigade. Much enjoyment comes from building with a purpose. Yeah, well, there you go. Thanks for that, Sean. That is...
hey, Sean.
That's awesome, that is. And I'm just having a quick look. Mark at Edinburgh Modelling Man Cave says Plasmo is never mentioned and he has done some wonderful work. I tell you what, Mark, we mentioned him here tonight, didn't we?
He has been one that's been mentioned repeatedly.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, Ivan, I'm taking over your show tonight.
No, that's all. I was going to say it is nice, like you say, when a magazine or a company says, "Can you build this?" and it's something you'd never do. Marcus sent me that Taka Merkava to build. Never a tank I had any intention of enjoying because I don't like it. I think it's quite ugly, not my style at all. Built it in 2 days, fell in love with it. Absolutely love it. It's such a beast of a tank. It looks cool, and as well as not forgetting to photograph it, so it's going to be a magazine piece. Because it was done in such a quick time, it's made me really feel the buzz for building again. So if you feel, because I was for quite a few months now, I've been feeling like, I can't really be bothered. I'm just in here for the sake of being in here. Slap that out in 2 days, and it's like, I love it. What else can I build? So just that weird little thing that maybe might not be your cup of tea can sometimes just be the thing that reignites the sparkle.
Yeah, reignites the fire. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I tend to think of, for me, what I build generally is still a reflection of my love of the subject matter. So unless something piques my interest for whatever reason, I've got some kind of, I like commercial shipping for some reason more than I like warships. So that icebreaker is kind of like on the cusp of commercial shipping, service shipping. So it really, really piqued my interest. I really wanted to do it. But, whereas John loved doing his Vespa, I've tried in the last few years to build some cars here and there, and it just doesn't, the fact that it's something different isn't igniting any kind of fire in me to build it. I still have to return to my core interests in the subject matter, which would be armor and aircraft, to really enjoy a build for the most part. But it's it's a broad church, isn't it? Everybody's got different motivations for why they do what they do. I cease to be amazed by again just how buoyant the kit market is at the moment, that a manufacturer will announce something and I will be, well, I've never heard of that before, but I must have one, right? Here is a case in point, right? The Lashley B15, right? The comedy truck that looks like it's got a little clown car stuck to the front of it. I'd never heard of it. As soon as I saw that, it's actually come out to a year ago. As soon as I saw that, I thought, I gotta have that. I've got to have one. As soon as I saw Mini Arts Land's Bulldog tractor, got to build that. They're doing that little, is it like a Tempo 3-wheeler coming out this year? Yeah, I've got to have that. And I think, I have my favorite subjects, you see. I've got the Special Hobby 32nd scale Westland Whirlwind, which I've started. It's my favorite aeroplane. A 32nd scale Westland Whirlwind dream kit. I've got Airfix 48 scale Chipmunk, another one of my favorite aircraft. I can't wait to build one, but it's I say it's finding the time, but it's finding the slot within the schedule. But there are kits out there of things that I've always wanted to build, which I'm hopefully going to get around to building at some stage this year. But those plans go out the window because somebody then announces, "Yeah, we're doing a little civilian 3-wheeler truck," and I'm like, "Yes, I'll have a slice of that, please." What I cannot kind of like emphasize
how brilliant this hobby is, and I'm going to be 55 this year. I know I don't look it. Just don't, you don't have to say that. And it's how it keeps throwing these surprises in that it, it keeps me, not so much motivated but enthused, but energized by just how buoyant things are at the moment. And this to some extent, this is why sometimes I can't understand the negativity that kind of like follows this hobby around, because it's like, come on, they're boxes of plastic, but this is awesome, and I don't get it.
We always say you can find what you look for. There's a negative, people don't like Facebook. You can find negative if you want to, but you can find positive. It's the same thing in the hobby. You can turn something that we've all gotten just decades, except for Ivan, soon Ivan, of enjoyment and relaxation from, and you can make it bad if you want to. But look for the good, and you can find that too. And like you were saying earlier, there's never been more of a menu for anything that you want. And if ICM or Zvezda or Tamiya doesn't release a kit of it, you can buy the STL files and print your own.
Well, I was going to say that's a comment we've got came back earlier on. It was Rob Monfils, yeah. And he says, "Is 3D going to change things though?" And I think, do you know what? I think Ivan, make a note of this. When we do another one of these, we'll talk about that at length, because I think that's something that's worth. I think that's going to take a longer discussion than what we've got left. But one of the things I will say, going back to that, what you're saying, Scott, is with some people, it's not so much that the glass is half empty or the glass is half full. It's they didn't want a glass in the first place. It's kind of, and ultimately you can't persuade or reason with that kind of attitude. So you just have to kind of, let it go, and it's one of our kind of like stock in trade cliches on the Interesting Modeling Company. It's your workbench, your rules. And if people have got opinions on what you are building and telling you it's the wrong kit or this, that, and the other, it's what you want to build it. Yeah,
I mean, I think the 3D printing is going to change the hobby, but I don't see it being negative.
Oh, absolutely not.
I know at least two of us here have one or more 3D printers. I don't know about you chaps, JB or Scott.
I have one. It's still boxed up from my move, but I would say 3D printing has already changed the hobby. We're seeing accessories and even full model kits. I have one here that are, it's incredible that were not possible through traditional manufacturing methods. And I think it's also great. And if they were possible, they were too expensive, where 3D printing can open up, bespoke subjects that we could potentially never see in injection molded. And I encourage any technology, anything to grow the hobby and move it forward, I'm all for. And I think you already see manufacturers adopting it. Ryfield Model, for instance, is one of them, has accessories that are 3D printed. And that's really to show, the value of the technology and the capability it has and where we go from here.
And you're increasingly seeing people like Edward and people like that are doing 3D printed stuff as well. And people like yourself, Ivan, myself, we've all got 3D printers. We all use them to do stuff with, and we're all getting to grips with the technology. It's not. It doesn't. I wish it meant I buy less models. Sadly, it doesn't. He says, looking at this week's pile behind him. So it's actually enhancing the hobby, not really changing my engagement with it.
Yeah, what's awesome is you see some people have 3D printers, and unfortunately, I don't do much design work. Engineering is far behind me from undergrad, but I point to our group build for Sherman. There's a gentleman, Matt McDougall, Duke's Models. He is literally, modeling a mine roller. And my other friend, he is, Resicast's DD Sherman is impossible to find. So he's like, well, I'm just going to model one and I'll print it. I'm like, give me that STL file. But that's the other cool part is even Martin's doing it, where he'll design a fuel can.
I'm doing it because
fantastic.
I use Fusion 360 weekly. I'm still getting to grips with it, but for generating stuff that you can't get any other, and repeatability as well.
Right.
Scratch building. Do I want to sit down and scratch build 37 of something for a given model, or do I want to design it once and print it off in an hour? Well, it's a no-brainer. You printed all those roofing tiles, didn't you, Ivan?
I did, yeah. For the yes, it was. Luckily, it was the file that Martin put on his Patreon.
Yeah,
did a tray of them, and I've got still a glass jar filled with them.
Yeah. And you know, just going with 3D printing too, I think it probably the people that say the hobby are dying is probably the same people that talk about 3D printing is not really the hobby, but it really is. You know, it's a craftsmanship in its own. When we think of scratch building, I look at people that are BJ DeBecker from Panzer Concepts. He does absolutely fantastic 3D printed models that he sells. Railguns, World War I. I have one. Absolutely gorgeous. Is it scratch built? In my mind, the way it is, you know, you're digitally modeling it, you are scratch printing it, and to think anything less than a true scratch build, in my mind, is rather narrow-minded. You know, these are skills. It's apples to oranges, but I can certainly appreciate both worlds, and they both should be, you know, held in high regard with skill and talent.
Well, look what David Parker's doing with Stugs.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. There was actually discussion about this. I'm trying to think, was it last year or the year before last? Because it's, you know, time and everything. And somebody was maintaining. It was kind of like, it was like a return back to the 1980s actually, because when, I know, when some of the first aftermarket started turning up in the UK, what we used to call the cottage industries, and it was things like PP Models, PP Aero Parts, and Aero Club. And there were people who were very sniffy at the fact that because somebody was able to fold a photo etched ladder and stick it on their Phantom and whatever, they were like, yeah, it's not proper modelling though, is it?
Because you're able to buy a white metal ejector seat for your Harrier or whatever.
Yeah.
It's not proper modelling, and this was the thing. It was something to do with 3D printing. It was last year. I can't remember where it was. It was on Facebook or something. And somebody was saying that in their opinion, if somebody is that they said that was it. 3D printing is not scratch building. They said if I go,
it was David Parker who was having that discussion.
No, he wasn't the protagonist, right?
No, but he was the one who started the discussion.
Right. I can't remember where it was.
He was talking about his 16th scale stuff that he was designing.
Yeah. But the thing was, somebody said if I go and buy a 3D printed part and use it, that's not scratch building. And it's like, yeah, you're right. That's not scratch building because you didn't originate it, right? Yeah. Whereas if somebody is sitting down there and they're designing the bits and they're printing them out and then they are incorporating them into their project, they are scratch building it because they if it wasn't for their use of this and this, there wouldn't be something for them to actually incorporate into their model.
They created it.
Yeah, I know, and it honestly, it went round in circles. I'm getting a headache thinking about it now, and it just, it came back to that thing that yes, but if I use it, it's not scratch building. Congratulations, it isn't. Well done for realizing that, but to me, it's no different to, to me, it's no different to the resin kits that started coming out in the 80s. You see, this is just the way 3D printing is going at the moment. This is a natural progression of how we started having the Checkmaster kits, they were called, weren't they, Drew?
Well, it's a natural progression from where we left balsa wood and dope behind and started getting kits made of plastic.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just these technologies get incorporated into what you're doing as time passes, and we even had the same argument a couple of years ago when there was using silhouette cutters to make masks and stuff started to become really popular, and we ended up, Frank Crenshaw and I and some other people set up a Facebook group for that, and we were doing all these, and people were saying, you're cheating. And it's like, I'm cheating because I designed and made a mask for this model. Sorry, no, you're going to have to go back and explain that. It was almost like, whereas once upon a time people said, if you use transfers, decals, you're cheating. Now suddenly decals are the standard, and if you're using masks to paint your model, you're cheating. Sorry, no, you've lost me.
Here we go. Tim Cavalier makes a good point. He says, so does that apply to someone who downloads a file, prints and uses it? Are they scratch building? No, they're not. They're not in much the same way as that, because they are buying or using somebody else's talent. in the same way as a plastic kit, a resin cockpit, a photo etch ladder, a metal engine. It's the same as that. They're not scratch building.
The person who originated that master
super detailing.
built it.
Yeah, exactly.
But the copies that are reproduced thereafter, it's not scratch building. It's
John Adams scratch builds an engine, right? Somebody who buys it then just uses it. That's the difference. But John has scratch built it. And it's the same, and you do get this sniffy thing, and I had this, within my professional experience. You sometimes come across this generational thing that it's just computers; they do all the hard work for you, and it's like I wish they did. I wish there was some people literally think you go out with a LiDAR scanner, and then you take it back to the office and you press a button that says "Make Kit." I think genuinely, Drew, somebody actually did suggest that the other day.
Somebody has suggested that. Yeah, it's just and it's the same with the digital artwork you're seeing on Edward and Airfix kit boxes these days. It's phenomenal artwork by Adam and some of the Eastern European guys, and these people can't join aviation art guilds.
No,
because they're being told that it's not proper art.
Mm-hmm.
You're like.
Yeah.
Sorry, how is I've seen people say, but that's just computer artwork. Anybody can do that. That's easy.
All right, fine. Anybody can do it. Show us.
So where I think 3D also is going to go for the hobby, and I look to the wargamers because I really think wargaming and miniatures are really pushing the envelope there. There will be a day. And it's already here practically where we will just buy STLs and that's everything down to figures. I love this one site for wargaming. You can go there, you can choose different poses. You can create your own digital figure from kind of pre-selected catalog of torso and arms and weaponry. And then at the end of it, you have your unique avatar and you can click, I want that STL. I think someday we will see the cottage industry for 3D printing evolve more into a digital world. And one of the things that might be difficult is always, the protection of that IP. But you can see it already where STLs are being sold. And I think that will become more apparent when people start, acquiring 3D printers. Because now I think you can get a 4K printer for under $300. I mean, it's absolutely insane how cheap they're getting.
Yeah, I mean, I think my last 4K, which was the Saturn I bought a few months ago, that's 4K, and that was about £400. But that's a big That's a big bill plate. My last 4K, my Sonic Mini 4K was about £300.
And they're gorgeous.
But they're just going to become, everybody's going to have one for whatever reason in their house. People, it will be like Star Trek with a replicator. You are going to have one.
It would be like printers and scanners. I remember, I can remember going back into the 1990s. There was an advert. It was an article in a magazine, and it was Mac format, and it was something like, scanners for under £1,000! Exclamation mark! And it was like, wow, a scanner for under £1,000. Tell me more. You can go down to Argos and pick one up for 30 quid now or something. And I think I personally think that I don't think 3D printed models are going to overtake plastic kits, because we come back to that thing about there is a huge ocean out there of people who just come in and buy things and whatever. I don't think it's going to change that much. I think it's certainly going to have a huge impact on our end of the market, which is the aftermarket and the accessories. I think it is going to completely revolutionize it.
I think you're going to find an evolution over decades rather than a revolution.
I think a mix of the two, because we're seeing it now, as JB said, with being able to download figures and choose your own poses and everything. I think we are going to get to a stage where you won't be buying resin cast ejection seat. You'll just be downloading a file. And I think it's going to change that end of our hobby. But I don't think it's, and you are going to get complete kits, but they're going to be complete kits of things that, frankly, you'd never make as an injection molded kit. We're seeing the aftermarket move into it, pretty rapidly in the likes of our good friend Mike Reeves. He's moving a good proportion of his production over to 3D printing now.
because he's getting as good results with considerably less effort and continually having to make new rubber, new rubber molds and stuff and cast stuff and all the rest of it. He's a very good high proportion of his stuff is moving over now to being 3D printed.
Yeah. And you can look, there's another gentleman in the States, Industry Mechanica, but it's sci-fi related. And he had probably some of the coolest resin kits, anywhere from a couple of years ago, the fish sub that Rinaldi did and the other weird kind of steampunk things. His product line now has totally transitioned over to the digital world. He does not sell any more physical copies. There's a multitude of reasons, the proliferation of 3D printers. And a big thing too is recasters as well. And those types of factors contributed to his decision. But Drew, going back to your statement, if anybody that's in the aftermarket business, you got to see the writing on the wall, and also the capabilities of the 3D printer to allow you to produce products that you might have never been able to produce through traditional mold making and manufacturing and masters. And it's man, every day there's something new. Like there was a company out of Hong Kong yesterday. They announced a RSO kit, which has stowage, track grousers, tracks themselves, all these different things, all 3D printed. And it's like, man, this is so dang cool. I need one. And I don't even have an RSO kit, but it's like these aftermarket manufacturers are influencing me to buy a kit.
But the technology we're using is becoming more and more accessible to, all of us as well.
100%.
You're starting to, this year, you will certainly start seeing 3D printers that can produce what a year ago was only available if you had 3,000 or 4,000 to spend on a Formlabs.
Yeah.
You're starting to see the first 8K printers coming through. You're starting to see Anycubic have got the light projection one coming, haven't they?
Yeah.
Any month. So you're starting to see the technology really starting to ramp up in that. So the results I was getting 2 years ago when I got my first Anycubic photon, now the Saturn leaves it in the dust.
And your Sonic 4Ks, I mean, that is high quality prints you're putting out, I bet. I mean, unbelievable.
There's a whole discussion to be had around the Sonic 4K because I've been extremely disappointed with it.
Really? Okay.
For various reasons, which is worthy of discussion another time. The Saturn has been just absolutely brilliant. It's been it's a fantastic printer. The Sonic Mini 4K has been a profound disappointment in a lot of ways. Probably it would take too long. I think we're running over already, John, considerably.
That's right.
No, so it's, what, after this I'll connect you with Billy Jean. He works in Colorado, but I'm pretty sure he uses Sonics, and but yeah, it'd be really great to connect you with him. He's huge.
Yeah, I think basically what it comes down to is after upgrading mine a couple of times and doing various assorted things to mine, I think at the end of the day I got a Friday afternoon machine. I really do, because I've seen a lot of people get absolutely stellar results from their Sonic Mini 4Ks, and mine just has no stability whatsoever in the Z-axis, and I've upgraded it and done all sorts, and there's just no stability whatsoever.
So you're not getting stellar results from the Saturn. There's irony for you.
Hey, no, I am getting stellar results from the Saturn.
All right. Okay.
The Sonic Mini 4K is the issue.
Okay.
So yeah, it's been but I think that is my specific machine rather than the brand, if you know what I mean. I'm reluctant to blame the brand because I've seen enough results from that machine from other people to go, something's wrong with my machine.
So the Saturn runs rings around it.
Indeed. Yeah, very good.
Yeah.
Very good.
Okay.
Yeah.
A few more there, Ivan. Make notes. This is quality material. I got this out of Michael McIntyre's Skip. So
this is quality comedy from John.
Yes. Gentlemen, I'm afraid I'm going to have to do any other business.
No, I don't believe so. No.
Other than saying we need to do this again, obviously, an hour is much too short a time.
Yep, I feel guilty for the fact that we have to we do have to terminate tonight because I've got another show to do in 15 minutes. But I got to say, we will be doing this again.
Oh, yes.
Yes, I definitely think so. We can shift the hours slightly one way or the other to make it more convenient for people, and not have any time constraints would be a fantastic afternoon or evenings
chat.
So I'm all in favour of it.
Yeah, well, that's unanimous then. I got to say, JB, Scott, Ivan, the other one, the hairy one.
Yeah, very good.
Actually, before we go, just got to share a screen here. Chrome tab. Where we go.
Lord.
Yeah, here we go. So Rush, 1980, 89. Here we go. And it goes along there, and they're playing along, and it's da 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 da, and everybody's happy. Oh, who's that smiling chap there? There he is. Look who it is.
That's me, circa 1988. Unbelievable.
Hilarious.
How many times did you see him, Drew?
12 in the end.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah,
I only saw him 3 times, but treasured memories. Memories.
I did manage to see them 12 times in the end. So, yeah. Soundtracks were alive.
So actually, I'd actually met Drew, or I'd actually come across Drew before I actually met him, because I do remember sitting there watching the video thinking this is great, and then my enjoyment was spoiled by this gurning fool turning to the camera, and I thought, well, that's it. I turned the VCR off. VCR, no. Yeah. VCR, Ivan, was a format of. It was like that. My evening was ruined. So no, it's weird. Like I say, it's weird how Drew had entered my living room before I met him. It's like, little did I realise.
And he thinks that's only because of a video.
Yeah, but he little did he realise that little did I realise that this face that was on the screen in front of me would soon be parked on the chair opposite, shouting at my television. So, but gentlemen, it has been a pleasure tonight. I'm sorry to everybody that we've not been able to read out all your comments because we have run out of time. We literally have run out of time, but we do appreciate we do appreciate your patronage this evening, and we'll be back Wednesday. You back Wednesday, Drew?
Yes.
Excellent. Yes. Right. Okie dokie. So until then, as always, stay safe, stay out of trouble. A big thank you to JB, Scott, and Ivan and Drew. We will see you back for our show on Wednesday.
Can you pump somebody from the...
Yeah, I am going to pump them. Yeah. Well, catch you later then. Bye for now.
Thank you, Jen.